Welcome to the Soul Tribe Podcast. The Soul Tribe Podcast was created to help you navigate through the world of spirituality, wellness, and self-development in an easy, grounded, and relatable way. We break down everything from the Akashic Records, manifesting, spirituality, and so much more. We want to help expand your boundaries and bring the spiritual world to you in a fun and easy way. Get ready to be inspired with tips, tools, and easy to digest information. Let's do this.
Hello, Soul Tribers. Today's episode is Interview with V. Oh my God, I don't even know how to begin. This interview was so much fun. It was totally different from our other interviews, very interesting, and we were just so excited. Lorena and I were both like giddy and excited before this interview, and Lorena originally was the one that knew about V. She follows her on Instagram. If I'm not mistaken, Lorena got to know V's profile through her hypnosis friend, Becca. So that's where the connection is, where we found out about V, and Lorena really always liked what she had to post. And so Lorena's like, well, let's get her on the podcast, talk about what she does, who she channels and how she functions. And it was just so much fun. And we had her guide speaking to us and giving us information. And we got to dig in and ask a bunch of questions, and we got probably a little annoying and asked too much. But it was just so much fun, and it was so interesting. And this fed my little heart of the last things that I've been looking into, which is I've been really into different species and dimensions and different realities. I've been reading a lot about different, extraterrestrials, or interdimensionals, or whatever you want to call it. And so, yeah, we actually are able to get into that a little bit in the interview, but this fed all that curiosity that I've been having lately. So for me, it was like extra fun, probably. Just a side note, at some point in the interview, you will hear me mention a show that I watch on Gaia TV. So for those of you who do have Gaia TV and are listening, I named it, I referred to it as Interview with Interdimensionals, and the show is actually called Interview with Extra Dimensionals. So, ED. So it's Interview with ED is the show, in case you have Gaia and you're looking for it. I named it wrong on the interview. So that's just a side note there in case you're interested. And if you're interested, definitely watch it. I love it. I'm obsessed with that show. I love it so much. It feeds my little alien heart. But guys, this is an awesome interview. So dig in, get comfy, and just prepare to hear a really cool tidbits. Okay, we are here today with V, who is a clairvoyant, psychic, medium, channeler, and you're a spiritual development coach. Did I miss anything?
No, you did not. But now I sound like an asshole with that many titles. But yeah, that's right.
Oh my God. No, you sound super developed and cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So many things. So this is amazing. So how did you get on this path of, I don't know, maybe you started with one thing, or maybe your gifts kind of came to you somehow, or maybe you can tell everybody kind of what led you on this path.
Yes. Actually, you're absolutely right. It started out as one gift and it all built upon each other. So when I was about 7 years old, this is how it all started. Actually, I was 7. I was in first grade. I will never forget it. I got in an argument. I don't know if it was an argument with my mom. Maybe I was just mad. She told me to do a chore. I remember storming up to my room. I slammed the door, locked the door, and I'm just huffing and puffing. And all of a sudden, a man appears. And I didn't know whether to scream or what, but for some reason, something told me to not scream. It was sent telepathically. So this man's in my room and he's saying, do you think that was very nice of you to say that to your mother? He sounded like, like how an old wise man would sound. And I'm like, I guess not, and he would tell me these wise things, and he would tell me to treat people kind. He says, your mom's going through something. You shouldn't always just burst out like that. And I'm like, yeah. But at that time, I didn't know that was, a spirit guide. I just assumed that was my invisible friend. I find that a lot of us as children have these invisible friends. They're actually most likely a spirit guide or some form of spirit who knows us, So I was just assuming it's just a, little imaginary friend. Turned out years later, it's obviously one of my spirit guides. But it started out at a very young age, but I ignored it. Just like I think a lot of us do. We want to rationalize what we're seeing or doing or feeling. So I put that to a side, became a normal teenager. Yes, I still felt very anxious in crowds and could pick up on people's emotions, and it stressed me the fuck out. But I didn't know what was going on really, because I didn't think I was a psychic. Whole time I thought that was just imaginary friends, So I was just putting stuff to the side. So yes, it wasn't until I guess I would have to say maybe a few years ago is where I started to take it really seriously, because there's no way I could control it. Every job that I had didn't work out. And that's when I realized, okay, there is something to this. I can't control this. So it actually started out as just psychic ability. So my main gift is clairvoyance. So I'm always, as you see, I was able to see, spirit. So I was always able to see things. That was my number one gift. It started out just psychic. And then eventually, after my mom passed, it ended up in 2017, mediumship started to develop. So then all of a sudden I would just be sitting there, and then I would see a dead person. And then I would talk to someone and be like, hey, I think your grandma's here. So it would then my mediumship happened in 2017. So, and I believe it happens like this for a lot of us, where all of us are born with the ability to communicate to spirit. That has never been cut off from anybody. So that is our divine right, in my opinion. So I believe everyone is inherently psychic. Whether someone chooses to develop it, just kind of like we all have muscles, right? Some people choose to be muscle builders and make big muscles, right? So it all depends on how you choose to use it. So for me, it started out as regular psychic gifts, and then mediumship just piled up. And then alien stuff started to come. And then I was like, okay, I just opened up a whole can of like otherworldly stuff. So I do believe things happen in cycles. Spirit would never give us too much that we can't handle. So I very much believe that. So I think that's why they slowly introduced me to new things. After, a year or two, I would get used to my regular gifts, and the mediumship happened, and then the contact with aliens would happen. And then my spirit guide Zalo, who's an interdimensional being, he showed up a few years ago. So he's a new, I would say new, but he's a very old guy, but he's new on my spirit team. So that's kind of how I got started, I guess you could say.
That's amazing. And that's so interesting what you say, like how it started with one thing and then that developed into something else. And I think that's so true what you're saying about, imagine if all these things were just thrown at you at once. Like that would have been, oh my God, like, what do I do?
Right. It's so overwhelming as is. Even with the regular psychic gift, it can be very overwhelming. So it really does come in doses. It really does. They would never, because think about it, when we're overwhelmed, we shut down, right? Spirit doesn't want us to shut down. So that's why they try to give it in doses. So yes, you're absolutely right.
Totally.
And also we might like end up in some crazy, institution because someone decided to put us there because we just look really crazy on the outside.
Exactly. I feel like a lot of times, I know it's a very sensitive subject, but I do believe that part of the people who are in there did have an overload experience. I do believe that.
Yeah.
Not all. Some people are born with some kind of chemical imbalances. It's true. But I also believe there is a percentage of the population that has had so many gifts bestowed upon them, and it just kind of short-circuited the brain, if whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that could be true for sure. Yeah.
So that guy that you saw when you were 7, is that the same guy that you're working with now?
No, it's not. That's what's funny. Zalo is not the same guy. Actually, that guy no longer is a part of my spirit team. And a lot of people don't realize that certain times our spirit guides can get switched out depending on our soul growth or soul evolution or whatever is going on. We do usually have one main guide that never leaves our side, but others do get changed out. So that one guy, sad to say, he's no longer with me, but
it sounds like what Lori and I refer to as masters. We always talk about how you have the same guide, but your masters switch up depending on what you're going through at the time.
Exactly.
The same thing, right?
Right. Exactly. Totally agree.
Yeah, because when you're learning new things, you need someone to guide you through that. So obviously your gifts change. So why wouldn't, your guide or your master change? You know what I mean? It's
exactly. Cool. You're right. Exactly. You are spot on. Exactly.
You need the guidance. Yes. I love that.
Exactly. Right.
So you talked about Zalo, right? So it's this interdimensional being. So like for me and Lucia, so you have a little bit of a background. We're Akashic record readers. So we're able to use a prayer to connect and directly channel information from masters, guides, and beings of light. And even like your spirit, right? Like your soul, sorry. How do you connect with Zalo? Is that like, how does that work for you, the process?
Wow. I never thought about the process because it happens so instantaneously all the time. Yeah. So for me, I guess I'm trying to see if I should do an example. Like I have two different examples. I have an everyday interaction with Zalo, and then I have readings with Zalo. So I'm trying to see the difference. So when I'm just chilling in my everyday life, like let's say I'm not really looking for an answer, I could just be in the car and all of a sudden he pops up. So sometimes he will interfere. Although yes, technically guides aren't meant to be. They don't really interfere without you asking. Free will and all that good stuff. But sometimes he'll just drop a nugget of knowledge in my head. It just gets channeled very quickly. That's just when I'm chilling. But in a reading, it's similar to how you guys do it. So if I'm in a formal setting, as I'm doing a reading, I will call him in and I would say, hey, I usually say the word intention. I'm setting the intention to get your ass here. But anyway, he gets me. So I usually set the intention for him to show up in a formal setting during a reading, and he's there automatically. I don't really need, you don't really pray to spirit guides. It's different than the Akashic records. Obviously it's way different. So with them, it's not really a prayer. I don't really pray to guides. It's just kind of like, hey, how you doing? Are you free? I need you. But with him, it's not really a protocol. So that's the beauty of our relationship, is that most people aren't aware that you can build really great friendships and relationships with your guides where it feels like how I'm talking to you and, you ladies, it just how we're talking. That's how quickly I'm talking with him. We have back and forth conversations just like we are. So it happens very naturally. As soon as I think of him, he's in my space. It's that instantaneous. Very quick, actually. So I wish I had some kind of formal method, but I'm so informal with everything that I do. So it's just very instantaneous. That's the only way I can explain it. And most of it is via thought and images. That is the number one way to communicate. Naturally clairvoyant. So that's how I normally do everything, is through seeing, but he also comes through with thoughts. Like the thoughts are very quick. It's almost like, I don't know how to explain it, but it just feels like just a quick spark. Also, he's able to he loves science, metaphysics. So anytime it has anything that has to deal with science, metaphysics, he's all about it. I do also find that with him, since I've been dealing with him, my experiences with different ETs have went up more. And I believe just because he's an interdimensional being as well. So I've also noticed that my interactions with different ETs have increased due to me being, Zalo being my interdimensional guide. By the way, he does come from Andromeda. So I don't think I ever disclosed that. Yeah, he does. And he says that I'm also a part of them. That was actually new information that I've learned this year, so that's why they definitely are around. But he says, and that's why he always talks about, I put it on a post a while ago on my Instagram saying he's from a nebula. He always considers it a nebula. And I think that before it became a galaxy, I think it was a nebula. He always sticks with the old words. He still considers it a nebula, but whatever, who's to say what's real, I'm not going to go against him. But he still says nebula unless he just means like a nebula near the star system, because but he always says, he's like, I am from a nebula. That's all he always says to me every time. But it's definitely in the
sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. So he's in another dimension. So he's incarnated in another dimension.
Yes. So he is able to, not only is he up there right now as we speak, as we're all multidimensional, so is he. So not only is he there, but he also participated and agreed to be my guide as well. And he's saying because we have soul ties from different lifetimes. So, and it's like that sometimes with certain spirit guides, whether they had human incarnations or maybe they had other planetary incarnations such as Zalo, they will, especially those the star seeds such as yourselves and myself, we do tend to the people, the different beings we had lives or different planets we lived on, we will in fact still attract those beings. They will still follow us after different lifetimes. So that's why Zalo's still hanging around my energy, and why he chose to be a guide is because from what he's saying is that we worked together on a planet before. So that's why he's like, we'll always have a connection and I'll always be looking out. So he also sends that message to anyone who's listening technically, is that when you are starseed and when you have incarnated on a different planet, you will have certain beings still look out after you. They follow you.
I love that.
Do you know what what he does on the other side? Like, what's his job? Has he ever told you?
What's interesting, he says he deals with, again, his specialties are in science. So he shows me a lot of equations. So he says he comes up with a different council, and he says he's on a council panel and they discuss certain ways about, he loves interdimensional travel. So he says, when it comes to working on spaceships, he's able to fix them. So he's like, I fix spaceships. I'm able to send them on their way through traveling through different galaxies, through different wormholes. He's also saying, even through white holes, we got black holes and white holes. So he says he studies white holes. Okay. There is such a thing. Well, at least in his
I had no idea. This is for something.
What is the difference?
Yeah.
From what he's saying is that, he's like, the white holes are very, very similar to the black, but you are able to, how do I say it? He's showing me an image of a ship going through a white hole. And he's saying that in this white hole, you're able to travel about like 10 times faster than you would than a black hole. So there's something with the white hole that not only can it increase the speed of your ship. I'm saying this like you guys have ships, but you know what I mean? How he's talking. I'm like, increase your ships with white holes. But he's saying something about the increase of speed. There is
maybe you're speaking to our other version of ourselves that actually have ships somewhere else in some other dimension.
You know what?
You
know what? That's true, because anytime we speak, we are speaking to all versions. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You ladies are so damn intelligent. I totally agree. Exactly. Killed it. So I agree. So that's why I'm like, he's saying it so casually, like you guys would know. So that's why I'm like, oh, they don't have ships. So, but now I'm hey, you're parallel selves.
That's really funny that you're saying that, because last night I do have like a connection with flying, because I used to be a pilot and I haven't flown in a while. So I love airplanes, and I'm pretty sure if I were an alien, I would love aircrafts. But I had nightmares like all night. Well, not nightmares, but it was like very disturbing. Like I felt like an urge, and it was just airplanes. I remember airplanes, but I don't remember details of the dream. And that was all night. It felt like all night long, really. So I was off somewhere last night.
I've had dreams with ships, and it wasn't an airplane. Definitely not.
Last night?
No, maybe a few months ago.
Oh, because I was going to say, maybe we went together.
I don't remember if you were in it, but I'm sure we've traveled all over the place together. I'm sure.
I agree.
You know what I think with the black and the white holes? I think when you were speaking and channeling that, what it felt like is like the white hole, it seems like it's just quicker energy. It's different vibrational energy that probably just allows movement in a different way. I don't know. That's kind of how I perceived it. It was weird.
The way that I perceive it, because we both have our Akashic records open, I perceive it as like time accelerates somehow.
Exactly. And, a lot of Zalo says that, he was able to work with this white hole energy, and most ships get caught up into it. Most ships don't make it out of the white hole, but he's saying that he found a way where you can make it through the white hole without your ship being harmed. And you're able to, again, like you said, there's a certain kind of, he says photon, he says someone photon. Guys, ladies, let me just explain this. I'm not scientific, so excuse me when I sound confused, because
it's okay.
He is so scientific, but he is saying something with the photon energy and something with the photon energy of the ship, the ion energy, something mixes with the white hole. So he's saying he also works with that. His other job, and he says, is to enlighten people, other than just being, there's so much you can do on, on that side of the galaxy, but he's like, we're pretty much okay over here. We're just making sure you guys are all right. So I chose to be your spirit guide so I can talk through you and, and help people to realize the power within themselves. The main message or messages that I received from him, and as you guys see it on my Instagram, it's mainly about power and inner power. That it seems to be the underlying and overall message from him and it makes sense because Zalo is literally, he works with power and power ships, and so he's also talking about our inner power, so, and just how much this human race has lost a lot. I don't want to say lost, but just haven't remembered. He says he doesn't like the word lost. He just says they just need to remember, the power that they were born with. And, and he's saying, there just seems to be, with all of the agendas at play on the planet and all the politics and all the BS, he says it can be easy to get your power kind of sucked away, from outside sources or I guess sometimes giving it away. But he just wants to say that he's really, oh, by the way, one thing, whoever had the dream last night, dream. Lucia, yeah. He's bringing that up. He just wants to say the reason why you can't remember it all is because sometimes when you lose a memory of a dream, it was because you were very much your consciousness was very much involved with action. So he just wants to confirm that the rest of your dream was in fact it just seems like your consciousness took up, like it went up such a few like high levels that the memory was kind of wiped. But he was saying you were very busy last night, and he's saying that it was because of all the he's saying it's a combination of anticipation and he, like of today just in general, but he's also saying that you do have a lot of work that you do. And he says also with the blue avians is why you have an interest with the planes in general. So he says the blue avians are really around you a lot. And obviously they're the flyers, right? So
who are the blue avians, like the avatars?
The blue avians, they are bird-like. They're flyers. I see an image, they're blue avians. So they fly. They're all about like literally flying, I think, because they're bird-like creatures or bird-like beings or whatever you want to call it. They're bird-like. So the blue avians are the protectors, he says. So they're very protective by nature, and they're very, very intelligent, and they do inspire people who kind of like you have a life mission of freedoms, someone who can't be in one place for too long, and that's what he's saying, that you do have a lot of that blue avian energy, and you do work with them on the other side in your sleep state sometimes. So he wants you to look into that, and he says you're going to Google it, even if I never said it. He said you're going to look it up anyway. So
of course I am. Of course,
of course, right? Of course. He says you're a researcher, so that's who you
she
are.
is a researcher. She is.
Yeah.
Very much so. That's so
awesome.
cool.
Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, we could do this all. I'm going to do this all day.
So wait, really silly Akashic Records related question. Maybe this
Yes.
is a bit, because we know like how the Akashic Records, and we connect with it via a place of very human energy, and if not like animal kingdom and plant kingdom and human kingdom. So only in this dimension. But is Zalo and his dimension, do they have an Akashic book in our same library, or do they have like their own independent Akashic library in a way?
They said one. He says one. So he
Mm-hmm.
says what you're tapping into is what they tap into. Okay. So he's saying that he says the way you're looking at it is from a limited point of view. He's saying you're minimalizing your effects and how you reach the Akashic. He says you shouldn't minimalize how you enter it. Does that make sense to you? So he's saying you're minimalizing it, meaning you're saying, well, my thing may be just kind of human, may not be the greatest. He says, no, what you're doing is exactly the right way. I understand. So he's saying that there really is overall one. what you're tapping into maybe is one small sector of it. So he understands what you mean by, oh, the human side of it, or this kingdom, you know. He says, yes, technically you're right in a sense of you are just tapping into a very small portion of it, but it's the same one that governs all. So he says that we all tap into the oneness. It's all one. So that's what he's saying. So technically what you ladies both tap into, he says, is the literal one that he taps into too.
That goes to show you how connected we all are. Like,
that's what I was just going to say. The collective consciousness, we're all connected, all of us, every single one. It doesn't matter if you're here on Earth or in another dimension. Like,
isn't that wonderful? Exactly. And that's what he's saying. He's like, you don't have to minimize it. We all are tapping into the literal same thing. So even for him, he's just saying, you know, we all just have access to different levels. You know what I mean? That's the only difference, just different accesses and different codes, or whatever you want to call that. He's also saying that even within the Akasha, there is different layers. There's layers. He's like, there's layers. So he says, technically, once they're open, you have unlimited access to what you can handle at that time, or to what makes sense for you and what you're supposed to know, as we all know that, right? But he is saying that, this is a side note, it has nothing to do with it, I don't think, but he is saying that even with dimensions, he says some people have different perspectives on what dimensions really are. He says that, let's talk about the third dimension. That's what we're currently in, right? So he says, even within the third dimension, there are dimensions within this dimension. Mindfuck, right? So in every dimension, there are layers of different dimensions.
I literally had a fight 10 minutes ago with my partner, and I talked to him about there's another dimension in our dimension that we just can't see it because we're in another dimension, and he basically called me crazy.
Oh my gosh, that is so. See how nothing's coincidental, and then what are the odds that I bring this up just now? You know what I mean? So that was Zalo's way.
You're just confirming me. Thank you for letting me know that I'm not crazy.
Isn't it so relieving to know we're not crazy when we have these like ideas? Because I've been coming up with these weird ideas, and when you find someone who's like, no, that makes sense, it's like, whoa, I thought I was nuts. So yeah, you're onto something. You're absolutely right. I think maybe that's why he brought it up, because it was so random. We weren't even talking about dimensions. So
I was talking about it, and he goes, yeah, go ask your little friend about your fake dimension kind of thing. He said to me, I said, I will.
Oh, so yeah, that makes sense then, why that came up.
And you know what's funny? You didn't even ask it, and it was brought up. Talk about that's a real confirmation, right? Yeah. You never even brought it up. So hopefully he hears this, and knowing that you never even brought it up, and Spirit brought it up.
I love it.
Oh my God. Oh, revenge is so sweet.
I love you. I love how you guys think. I love you have great personalities. But yeah, you know, and with the dimensional thing, so let's talk about this. Like, even with what's everything, okay. I can talk for hours on this. So, okay, with the dimensional experiences within dimensions. So, for instance, have you wondered, even with all that's going on right now, there is a group of people who believe that, okay, so let's talk about even with belief systems. Certain groups of belief systems belong to certain dimensions of consciousness. So there is a group of people who believe one thing, then there's a group of people who believe another thing, but it doesn't mean their beliefs or experiences are not real. It just means that it is very real. It's just happening on a different dimensional levels. A lot of people argue amongst each other, and many people feel dignified that they're right, and they feel right because in their reality and their group reality experience, dimensional experience within this third dimension, we are all operating at different levels. So for instance, when certain people say we are moving into a fifth dimensional experience, Zalo laughs. Zalo hates that terminology, actually. He says we are all operating within the fifth, third, fourth, sixth dimension, because we're all flickering in and out of these dimensions, depending on our vibrational rate at any given moment. But he is saying that we're not really, he says it's not so much we're really moving to a fifth dimension. It's just that people are just shifting their perspectives about this world and the illusions. It's just really, he says, it's the crumbling of certain illusions and false he says, and false illusions within this reality. And that's what happens is, he says, it's really about unraveling. When you unravel and get rid of all these layers of untruth and lower vibrations, he says, what's left and what's revealed is the higher dimension. So he's like, it's not really a place, as I'm sure you ladies know, it's not really a place, but they are saying that it overlays this one. And there are people right now on this earth, actually, who are in fact experiencing fourth and fifth dimensional consciousness in that dimension, because certain people right now are not affected by the coronavirus. There are certain people who don't even believe it exists. Those people who are saying that it never existed or it's not real, they are operating at a different level from their reality experience within this third dimension. In their reality, it is very real that it doesn't exist. And then you got some people where it absolutely does. I know this may sound crazy, but I feel like now I'm sounding crazy.
No, this all makes sense to me. This makes so much sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too.
Totally. And it makes it seem, it just, I don't know, I totally understand it. It doesn't seem crazy at all.
It's because I think maybe it's like a vibration thing, right? Your vibration is so high that even if it surpasses in front of you, like, it's not going to affect you, kind of thing. It's not in your own, it's almost like you create your own dimension, right?
Literally. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So within these realities that we're all creating, it eventually turns into a group reality, group consciousness, collective consciousness. And within these collective consciousness, you have people upholding it. It's only upheld by the beliefs, once you get rid of certain beliefs or illusions, it can collapse, so it's that simple. But Zalo says that there's different dimensional experiences within each dimension. So in the third dimension, you got the lower of the third dimension, then you got the middle third dimension, then you got the higher third dimension, right? So not every dimension is completely equal. So we have 3 different realities running within this third dimensional realm. We got 3 densities of the third dimension running in this third dimension, meaning there's 3 different forms of densities currently programs that are running. He calls them programs because, I know, just to get really down to it, he says it really is technically a simulation. So it's really just he says programs. So there's 3 different densities or programs within this third reality. And that's why there's so much confusion and so much conflict. And he says, even without the different dimensions within one dimension, it still would be, with how we as humans can be, there's still going to be a lot of BS and a lot of confusion and violence and sadness, unfortunately. But he definitely wanted to just talk about the overlaying dimensions, because it is a very real thing. And that, you don't have to do much different to even reach the 5th dimension. He says people have these kind of, sometimes a fallacy, he says they have this fallacy that it's almost like, he says, think about the biblical times. If you think of the Bible, that if you pray a certain way, like I was raised Catholic, and, I used to, they made you recite like so many prayers, like it's like repeating prayers, right? Like a ritual. So it's like, even in those times, you can think of even using Catholicism, you could say, they're praying these prayers because they're thinking it's going to make them achieve, we can even use a new age term, 5th dimensional experience, right? It's the same thing. The Catholics, they say, well, I'm praying to Mother Mary and I'm reciting this rosary because it's going to make me get into heaven. It's going to make me accelerate as a human. I'm feel closer to God by doing this. Is that any different from people in the new age community meditating and reciting rituals and doing rituals to accelerate their spiritual growth? He says, what's the difference? And that's why he's like, not saying to you guys, but in a general term, he doesn't like to get people fixated on the idea that you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to experience bliss of the 5th dimension, right? Mm-hmm. Heaven on earth, and he says it's completely self-created. And he's just saying that, we want to get a little bit conspiracy in here. I can't help myself.
I'm so into it.
I can't help myself, guys. I'm a conspiracy lady, but I'm only a conspiracy lady because I get my facts from my spirit people. But
I love
technically, there is certain infiltration from the government in the New Age community. If you have been feeling, and this goes for you ladies and anyone who's listening later on, if you've been feeling over the last, I would say 2 years, but specifically, obviously this last year is kicking up a notch. I would say the last 2 years. Zalo says that there has been more infiltration from the government these last 2 to 3 years than more than ever, especially with putting certain people and I would say, he shows me an image of YouTube. Okay. So he says there is certain hypnotic YouTube videos that certain, quote, spiritual teachers put out there that are not actually, they're actually government agents And I know that sounds very conspiracy-ish, but
Oh, wow.
he says if you felt a weird energy about the spiritual community, meaning that you feel like you want to kind of just do your own thing or just like kind of not follow as many people as you used to, like, and I mean people like, you know, certain teachings or certain things. He says it's a very real experience and happening for a lot of people. He says some people are waking up saying, wow, I need to be my own guru. I can't, like, this person makes sense, but why do I feel like something's off? And
Yep.
this is in no way trying to demean spiritual teachers or anyone. This is not about that. Everyone has their own path. Even those government agents still deserve to be loved. You know, as hard as it sounds, they still deserve to be loved, right? So he says everyone has their own path and why they're doing what they're doing. But he also wants to say that, you know, what's going on, especially like with, you know, the COVID-19 and now we have the riots and stuff. If you guys are open, I can just talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. If he wants to say things about it, definitely.
Yeah. So like, I'm just going to talk about a little bit what I see energetically coming in the next few months. You know, unfortunately, it's going to be more division between the human race. He says it's going to be more race related issues. There will be another death that will be highlighted, you know, either in June in this month or in July. And he's also saying in terms of not only just race, like black and white, there will be another death that will cause outrage, but there's also going to be another thing of outrage with like even the LGBTQ community. There will be another outrage that will spark another kind of big thing that's going to happen this month or next month or in the next few months. And also, unfortunately, guys, and I didn't want to make this like a prediction thing, but I'm also seeing like really, really bad hurricanes this year, especially
God,
near
tons
like
of people
Puerto
have said
Rico.
that. Oh God, and I'm
Yeah.
in the Caribbean.
Yeah, please be just be careful because I'm
I keep
seeing
telling
that.
Lorena, you can tell her, like I call her every like 2 weeks and go, are you leaving yet? I can't. I'm stuck here. The airport's closed.
And I'm telling you, it's going to, you know, once hurricane season starts, it's going to be pretty bad. I feel like they're going to devastate Puerto Rico once again. I am so sorry to say it, but like, I don't know why they keep targeting, and I say they because if you guys are familiar, there is a technology called HAARP, which is the government is able to manipulate weather.
I've heard about that, and I said, how is this happening? And I'm just finding out about it.
Exactly. See everything. Exactly. So you were already onto it. So you guys are highly intuitive. So you guys already know. So there is the HAARP and they do, and it's a very real thing. They say they discontinued it in like the 70s or the 60s or 80s or whatever. I don't know the exact time, but they didn't. So what happens is they deliberately devastate specific countries, you know, for their agenda. So I do feel like, unfortunately, they will use that energy to, kind of ruin Puerto Rico again. I also feel like the Carolinas are going to be, pretty hit really bad. The islands, the whole Caribbean, it's just unfortunate, you know? So I do feel like, especially because it's the election year, they're really going to take it up a notch. So we're going to see more race riots, more, you know, even like a certain death in the LGBTQ community that's going to be devastating, and it's going to cause more rioting, more protests. So over the next few months, energy wise, it's going to be more tactics to divide people via race and sexual orientation. I do want to talk about something. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Is this, do you think this is because the government wants to separate more, or whose agenda do you think it is?
Yeah, it's actually from what Zalo's saying is that they do not want Trump to win. It's all politics, girls. It's so stupid.
Yeah,
it's all
I know.
politics. It's all, that's why from now leading up into the election, it's going to be pretty bad. So I'm just bracing everyone. It's going to be every month we're going to have something new to be devastated by. They're preying on our emotions and our fears. So they're going to keep doing this all the way up until November. And other than just their agenda of having, they don't want Trump to win and they really want Biden to win because he's easily manipulated and he's also a clone. Yes, I do see clones energy. He is a clone and he's being controlled. So, again, I know this sounds like a very, very Nazi of me, very crazy, loony bin of me, but whatever. I have to share it.
We don't think you're crazy. These are all things that I seriously have been getting some weird messages too.
and Lucia as well, where we feel like there's some weird things going on right
We
now.
also
like
feel like it's
energetically,
like a hot pot, and the lid's gonna like blow off, and this is just the beginning. That's how it
this is
feels
just
to
the
us.
beginning. Yeah.
I agree. Ladies, you guys are 100% right. I completely feel the exact same message. Like, this is just the beginning. Like, from the COVID thing, that, they thought that was going to be it. Like, that was going to destroy the human race, but it did not. So what are the odds, ladies? Have you guys noticed that, like, there's no government talks of COVID? As soon as the rise started, like, no one's talking about the virus anymore. I thought that was always interesting. But I do want to talk about the spiritual side of this. Energy wise, from what Zalo told me, is that we are being shown the shadow of ourselves and a shadow of our collective energy. Are you guys familiar with the term shadow and shadow work and all that stuff?
Yeah.
And what he's saying is, as a collective consciousness, as a human race, this is our shadow side. Everything that's manifesting, including the Illuminati, they are, in fact, the manifestation. I know that sounds very hard to believe, but they are a byproduct of the dark energy of all of our shadows. Okay. And I'm not saying that us as humans literally wanted that kind of control or craziness over us. It's not like that. But what I'm saying is that when humans can be controlled by vices, the Illuminati will always be in control. Does that make sense? Meaning that
makes sense,
they
yeah.
control us through entertainment. We all love, there's nothing wrong with entertainment. They control us with the drugs. We all, like a good drink here and there, whatever. But as long as we have our vices, or like those sickos who like the sex trafficking, you know what I mean? All of that stuff will always continue unless we as humans decide, like, hey, I'm not going to participate in this anymore. Right? So the Illuminati can only exist and have some kind of power over us if we are falling for it, or maybe having hard times with our own vices personally as individuals. Right? So from what Zalo's saying, a lot of this is shadow. The shadow of the collective energy is now boiling to surface so that the energy can be healed and transmuted. Many people are going through deep awakenings right now. Many are confused on what to believe or who to trust. This is a very common theme, especially this last year with the COVID and everything. So the feeling of feeling confused, when we are in a confused state, that is when we are most easily brainwashed and manipulated. And that's what I feel is what's going on. And my suggestion would to be never lean on the media to help you form an opinion. You have to lean into your own heart. A part of why this is all happening is because we are returning to what our purposes are for, right? Think about how the COVID made everyone not work, for months. Like, we had nothing to do. We were forced to return back into ourselves and return back to serving our actual purpose. Like, yes, we need jobs for money and until we get our purposes off the ground, or our passions, or whatever you want to call it. But now it's like a return to ourselves. And Zalo is like, this is not a good time to try to force yourself to say, let me get back to work. Let me go back to doing the same old bullshit. He's like, no, this is a time to reevaluate what bullshit you've been tolerating for many, many years and what you can do differently. That's also what the COVID was giving you an opportunity. All this time off was to pause and say, do I really want to go back to doing what I've been doing? Do I really want to do that?
Yeah, we
And
felt that as well.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that it's been going on for a lot of us. And what's going on is that we've been so dependent on outside sources, on outside, instant gratification, validation, outside everything, that now we're being forced to look within our hearts. And also, like I was saying, don't allow the media to form an opinion for you, because it will. And obviously, as you've seen with all these riots, it has. And this is a good time to lean into our own hearts. Think of ways as an individual how you can show up compassionately for yourself and others. The energy will be tugging on a lot of people's fears of speaking up and speaking their truth. Have noticed that many people, and even including ourselves, like even me too, that stuff that we never would have spoken about or be more open about, we're now speaking on. And that's he says there's a change in the collective consciousness, where the people who had issues speaking up are now speaking up. This is so you will see many people who felt they didn't have a voice actually speak out. So that's another big soul lesson that I'm seeing happen as a collective, is speaking up for each other and for oneself. This is happening so, we can become more authentic, really be who we are. And as cheesy as it sounds, it really is a dark versus light thing. That's really what's going on. It's not me versus you, black versus white. It goes way beyond that, energetically speaking. So what we are seeing play itself out right now is a shift on this planet for the good. I also feel like next year will be a really good year, especially financially. The economy and for the economy and for regular people like us, especially when it comes to businesses and getting loans. It's going to be really good. Also, how the money and how you get loans will change. Something with the money financial system will change. I don't know if it's going to be digital currency, but there's something big that's going to change financially for a lot of us next year, and it's going to impact the dollar, impact money. And again, something with student loans and also getting business loans will change for the common person, will make it easier and not big interest rates. So financially, it's going to be a great year next year. I know that's like way far ahead. It's nothing to do with the now moment. But as far as COVID-19, back to what I was saying, it's just about learning new ways to operate in our purpose. That's one of the main thing, is really see what you can do with your purpose and find new ways to operate in your purpose and in your truth.
Yeah.
Wow, that all resonates so much.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with all of that. I've been feeling, if
felt
not the
all
same
that.
thing, similar, right?
Yes.
So question, his Zalo's, so we all have we have a density for supposedly us here on Earth. We have a density of 3, and we have a dimensional. Some of us are vibing on 4, some of us are vibing on 5, right? What
Yes.
about Zalo's, his dimension? What density do they have, and what vibrational dimension do they have for spiritually?
Oh, good question. He says they're in between 10 and 11. So
Wow.
yeah.
So we're down there.
So yeah,
we're like the little kids that didn't grow up yet.
I know, right? I know. That's why I'm like, thanks for choosing to hang out with us down here. Because yeah, he's like, we're at the 10 and 11th. We're at it. He says they're at such a point that there's really, everything is very harmonious up there. There's a lot of group thinking, like like what's it called? Like a hive mind in a way, where it's like they all operate as one. There's a lot of oneness energy. Technically we all are one, right?
Yeah.
But they do operate as like not all. He says there's different sectors of their dimension. So they have one part of their species and dimension that is just hive mind, which is a group consciousness where they all think as one. There is no individual. There's no individuality. Then you have another aspect where they're able to experience individuality, such as being able to, like, for instance, so I was saying him contacting me, he's able to learn more about human race. So he's like, not only did I choose to be your spirit guide to just help you, but I also did this to learn. So he's really doing this for learning purposes and like observing and reporting back. So he's like, I get to feel and express and see certain things through your eyes, so I'm able to learn. So that's also his reason for wanting to like kind of be down. I wouldn't say be down here, because he's just a consciousness. He can be like just like we humans, we're multidimensional. We can be in many places at once,
Yeah.
So it's the same thing for him.
Totally.
Yeah. So they don't have obviously their structure is going to be different. They don't have a government that governs the people.
Right. No. He says it's like, he says all of that. He says it wasn't even an issue for us. He says that there is no actual government. He says we all have a knowledge about, they said they don't have like a morality. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, there is no right or wrong. He just said there just is. Okay.
Oh.
So he's like, there is no one really. There's no criminals for government. He says government's control for people who maybe be prone to violence. He says we have no violence, so we don't have anyone to control anybody. So that's why we all just are very harmonious.
What a human question to ask.
Oh, I know, right? And you know what's funny? He's so patient, and he totally gets it. So it's like he's so willing to answer everything, whether how human or non-human. So he's just saying that everything, he says, we live. He says if you saw me, you would think of me as air. So what he's saying is he's gaseous. He's made out of gas. And I don't mean farts. I just had to say it. I couldn't help myself. But,
yeah.
But
that's when but incarnated, so that's him when he's not incarnated, right? But
exactly. So when he's not, he's just a ball of gas, like gaseous,
okay.
like a nebula gas. He's like a nebula. He's like, think of a nebula, like I'm part of it. He's like, I'm literally, he's like, in human terms, I would be air, the wind. something you can't really see, but at least in gas, he's like, you can kind of see the waves through gas. But he says that's my real form. But when I see him sometimes, like, he only showed himself physically once to me, where he showed up as one of his past lives on Earth. He did live on Earth before. He was in England, in Britain, because he sometimes he comes through with a British voice, which can be kind of annoying to me. But not saying not saying that British people are annoying, not like that, but like when I'm trying to do something, you hear someone just with a different accent, I'm like, what'd you say? Like, but so sometimes he can manifest himself as a British person, and sometimes he talks normally, like how I'm talking to you guys. We'll just talk like normal. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not saying that as British people do not speak normal. So please don't be. I don't.
No, it's more like what you're accustomed to. Exactly.
What I'm accustomed to. Exactly. Yeah. So
and also like your mouth has to move. Like the muscles work differently, right, with your face.
Yeah, like even my voice changes when I speak Spanish, because we're both from Uruguay, from South America. So when I speak Spanish, my voice changes. Everything changes. Even the way my mouth moves changes. It's like it's so
That's
weird.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly. So you guys get it. So sometimes just the dialect, the certain accents that I have a hard time hearing. Right. Yeah. So I'm like, what'd you say? So that's all. So but that's how he manifests himself. So without that, he's just a ball of gas in the universe.
So he connects with you, and you get these messages from him, and he's, like you said, so patient. He seems that way. That's the energy I feel. But
yes, you're absolutely right.
So he's coming here, kind of more conscious here to get information. Is he like trying to get information to bring back, to understand us? Because I keep getting these weird messages, and other people also saying that like aliens want to come visit us, like they want to come here, but they're not. We're not ready.
Yeah, and here's what's interesting. He says, whether you guys are ready or not, we've been here since the eons of time. So he's like, I don't understand. There's this romanticizing that someone's going to come in the year 2052. He says, come on, we've been here all the time. He says, you just don't see us. So he's saying that they've been here, first of all, as you guys, as the conspiracy say, aliens helped build the things. Of course they did. He says, of course we did. We were one. He says, and even in ancient Egypt, there were beings that we were reincarnated as humans, but we still had our alien DNA, but we just looked like a human. So technically you could say it was built by aliens, but we worked side by side with our fellow humans. They had the abilities, even in ancient Egypt, they had the ability to levitate some of those bricks to build the pyramid. So he says it was built by levitation. And a lot of people and born in those times did have those gifts, or at least certain alien ET races would come down and shapeshift into a human and would help us. And so he says, technically, Zalo really, he has no patience for, people having agendas for, he says everyone's learning at the level that they can operate in, but he just wants it to be well known that they've been here they're here all the time. There is no actual date. He says if you get a date from someone, he does believe that maybe whoever that, like, let's say someone says, okay, I've channeled an alien being. They said they'll be here in 2025, right? Let's just use an example. Someone's going to land in 2025 and say, hey, we're here. We exist. I've been hearing this since I was like 9 years old. We all heard the story. Aliens are going to reveal themselves at this age, at this time, right? So he's saying that when that happens, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the channel or there's something wrong with the ET being. That definitely could have been an actual date from that alien race, but things happen that change, and then boom, that 2025 happens, and what happened to that prediction? They're not there. Actually, they probably came, but no one, the different various levels of vibration, you may not have seen them. So technically, all those years that people say aliens are going to come and take over, it could have happened. It probably did. Now, I wouldn't say take over, you know what I mean? But I would say, as far as showing themselves, they're saying they do reveal themselves to certain people on this planet, but not all. So he just wants to say that we've been here all since this planet was created. He says there are certain beings that helped seeded this planet. So we've been here literally since the creation of this planet. That's what he wants to say. So he says, of course, we're always here. There really is no one set date. He just says it depends on the people and the person at any given time to be aware. He says, just look up. He says, look up. No one looks up. That's all. His advice always is look up. He says, not a lot of people look up to the skies enough. So he says, you just got to look. And he says, in combination of looking, You have to be kind of like how you ladies are extremely intuitive, especially like with your clairsentience gift. Like one, you guys are very clairsentient in my opinion, which is that intuitive feeling. So he says, you guys just look up, and then once you look up, you may not see something, but if you're feeling something, especially with that gift of clairsentience, that gut feeling, that's a sign that someone's there, even if they're invisible. You can just kind of feel it. But he just wants you to know that it is a very real thing. Even those channelers who channeled certain dates, he says, yeah, most likely the aliens probably did come, but no one's just really that aware of it. It's really a matter of awareness, in his opinion.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
We keep hearing about supposedly the Yael people coming here because they're the ones that are most similar to us, and they have part of our DNA. Can he talk to us about that at all?
Yeah, it's interesting. I never heard of them until you brought them up. When I read your, it was my first time hearing of them, which is strange. So here's what Zalo says. He says 100% yes, they are very similar. He says they're humanoid in nature. So he says they do exist. They are very fact real. He says the people who are channeling them are great. He says their messages are wonderful, and it is very real. They do walk side by side with us humans, but he is saying that they will, he says they will make their contact more noticeable over the next, I would say he says 15 years, within 15. That's a long time. What's 15 years from now? 2045? Yeah. So around like between now and 2045, again, that's very generic. It's a very long years, but he's saying that it just means, he says the timeline is just for humans. He says humans need time because we operate within the confines of time, right? So sometimes we need timelines because it's tangible. It's something we physically have to hold on to. So he says, okay, I'll give you a timeline from now between 2045. But he's saying that, again, it's going to be similar like it was before. It's not going to be that, oh my God, it's all over the news, the world's going to stop because there's aliens showing up. He said it's not going to be that dramatic. He said that's a misconception. That's going to be that dramatic. He says there will be a group of people who will see it, and it may get pushed down. The media doesn't want certain things to get, out there, but he's saying that once all of this Trump stuff is over, once his election's over, he's saying it's going to change the course of history. I do feel like he may get reelected again. Most likely, yes, he will. So once he gets reelected, I do feel, at least the timeline that we're on, I really do believe he's going to reelected. But once he gets reelected, or whatever happens during this politics stuff, the next 4 years and the next couple years, politics will change, as we know. And when politics do change, it will not look the same. There won't be, there will still be a democracy, but it's going to be a lot more spiritually inclined. And he says that's where those beings come in. Okay. So when we change the politics on this planet, he says those beings will help come through with a spiritual way of being. It's something with them using their spirituality to help the politics on this planet, or how we deal with one another in a harmonious way. Something with how they do things on their planet, they're going to try and teach us something like that. So Zalo says that is, in fact, that's what he's saying, what he's seeing, but he's also saying that they're very much involved, even right now, with a lot of us. He's even
There's quite a few like channelers that channel Yael people. So it's super interesting.
Oh, is there? Okay, yeah, and
Yes.
that makes sense because he said they're involved with a lot of us here on this planet.
Yeah.
So he's saying
you
that
watch like, for example, Gaia TV.
I never watched Gaia.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed with Gaia. So
I never
Gaia,
watched it.
It's like kind of like Netflix, but a spiritual Netflix.
I know, and it's funny. I've heard about it, but like I've never actually sat and like watched something. I just thought, is this generic or cheesy? That's just me. I never.
I listen like to interviews and stuff while I'm like cleaning the house, for example. So there's this one guy that has the series, because there's series on Gaia. It's almost like Netflix has their series, right? And there's a series that's called Interview with Interdimensionals. Maybe you should be on that show, actually. But the people that channel interdimensionals is this guy that does that, and there's quite a few episodes where there's people that channel Yael people, and the message is always like, we're going to be the first ones that physically show ourselves, because they're so similar in vibration and in like human aspects to us, that they're the first ones we can actually handle to see first, in a way. It seems that way.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was saying, that is true, but he's saying that it's not going to look how people are thinking, like not their looks, but when they show themselves, they said it may not be as dramatic as what we think it would be. But I do see once after this election and once the politics change on this planet, which it will by 2030, we will not be operating. We will not be having these similar elections as we used to. It won't look anything like this in 10 years. So once we get to that point, Zalo says, when we stop this politic games and stop this bullshit pretty much, he says in 2030, around 2030 leading up to 2035, it's going to be so different, and that's when it's going to be easier for different alien races such as them to come through and help us out establish a new system. He's saying they're here to help rebuild our system, a system that works in harmony and in spirituality. That's what he keeps saying: harmonious spirituality, and also with different ways of being able to eat food. I know that's so random. He's saying also with the food supply, something will change with the food. That's very random. I mean, for the better.
That message too, the food. That's going to be a huge thing.
Yeah, I've started my own garden.
Exactly. Gardens, like that's exactly what he's saying. Like, we're going to go back to those really extremely holistic ways of living and being more transparent on the boxes. Like, I know they already have, like, now they're forced to put made with GMOs. Like, some boxes still have those now, but it's going to be even more transparent with our food. That's going to be such a revolution in the food industry in the next 10 to 15 years as well. And that's why he's saying, so just to confirm, 100% they will show themselves. But Zalo's saying there will be another alien race that will want to he says with he shows me the constellation of Sirius. Okay. So he's saying even certain beings from that constellation, he always talks about constellations. He says constellation S. So certain beings from that constellation in Sirius, he says they're also around, and they will be making themselves known even more. A lot of people channel a lot of beings from Sirius anyway, but he is saying that there will be some species from Sirius that will come forward as well in the next 15 years. But again, he's saying it's not going to look as dramatic as what we think it will be.
It's like not going to be apocalyptic like that vision you have in movies. It's going to be like maybe gradual, so that people can handle it more evolved.
And peaceful, because I think we all as humans, not maybe all of us, because I don't think that anymore, but I did at one point, of like thinking, oh, aliens are going to come and take us over, like we said before, right? But that's not the case. They actually want to help, right? Like, that's the energy I get.
Yes, and you're absolutely right, because Zalo always tells me that the media, the reason why they in Hollywood that they make those movies, they do that to make people fearful, so they don't waken up to remember the truth of who we are. So they make ghost movies and say spirits are evil, or they're going to possess you and they're all demons. He says that's all a ploy, it's all a game, to get people scared. Same thing with the alien. Why are all alien movies horrible? He says that's another thing, is because they don't want you guys finding out the truth, that we are peaceful people, most of us. He says, oh, best believe they're still dark, they're still evil ones. He says, yeah, they still exist. There's still certain species that, he says, it's not so much the species are evil. He says you got to look at them as unevolved. That's all he said. He says certain alien species now considers humans evil, but he says it's just we're unevolved. So it's the same thing even with certain species out in the cosmos. Some of them, they're not evil. They come off as evil here in the third dimension because that's the word we use for it, right? He says they're just unevolved and they're ignorant. They're just unaware. They don't know. And he says some species are very powerful and do know what they're doing, and they still choose to be evil. So he's saying it's a combination of all of that, but he's saying that the movies do over dramatize the negatives, and he says there's about 89% positive beings in the whole cosmos versus the small percentage of evil, or the negative ones. You know what I mean?
They're still doing better than Earth, though.
Yeah, hey, they still evolve to the point where they have space travel, and that's another thing. Zalo's like, they have been really sneaky with the space travel. What he means by sneaky, but I mean, like, they've had this technology for eons of time. Space travel, he says, oh yeah, your country, America, And even different countries across the globe, you know, a lot of them are very well aware of interdimensional travel. And a lot of them have done interdimensional travel. Have they released it to the public? Of course not, because they don't want us to know for whatever reason. But he's saying that, you know, the technology exists. And he says Tesla definitely was a walk-in spirit. You know, he was a walk-in. He was definitely from a different alien race, just used a Tesla body. Think about how Tesla had no attachment to humans. You see how Tesla had no actual wife? No, he barely had a social life. He kept to himself most of the time. And usually a lot of when you have what's called a walk-in spirit, sometimes it doesn't have to be alien in nature. Sometimes we can sign up as a soul contract where we have a walk-in where if we're tired of this life, we're like, hey, this soul will take this part of my life over. It's called walk-ins. So it can even happen with aliens, with alien races. You can make an agreement saying, well, I'm going to utilize this body to, you know, accomplish a mission. And I do believe that Tesla was a walk-in from a different alien race. And just to kind of expose the free energy, you know, that we do have on this planet. And and usually that's why he had no attachments to earthly things, such as having children or wives. He didn't really have much of that. That's exactly why, because he was alien in nature, and aliens don't have attachment to human stuff. And that's why he's like, he had a job to do. I'm getting in this life, get in, get out. Boom. That's exactly what happened with Tesla. He was definitely an alien walk-in.
Never heard that before, but very interesting.
Yeah, interesting. I never thought about it, actually. Yeah.
The walk-ins.
Yeah, the walk-ins is a very real thing. I feel like it's funny now thinking about it. I don't think a lot of people either we just don't talk about it, or maybe there really isn't a lot of knowledge. I guess maybe we should talk about it more, but it is a very real thing. Walk-ins.
Cool. I love it. Yeah. I think you mentioned something about portals. That interests me a lot, and I don't know a lot about portals. Like, what is a portal exactly? And is there a way that we, as humans, can use these portals to get, like, I know, like, when we sleep, we can go to other dimensions, but are there like physical portals that we can, like, I don't know, like, travel through? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. There are, yes. Just to answer your question, yes, there are portals even here on this earth. So a portal is just like an energy source. How do I say? It's like a ball. The visual that Zalo shows me is a ball of energy. It's like it's swirling very fast. So he's like, if you can imagine like a energy circle at warp speed, it's vibrating so fast, right? He's saying it's a source of energy that allows you to travel to other parts of your own galaxy here on Earth, our own galaxy neighbors, our different constellations and planets here in our solar system. But he's also saying certain portals can take you directly to specific coordinates in the universe. That's also what's interesting. So you have some portals where people randomly stumble upon and then just end up in a different part of Earth. Then we have, hold on, let me take this back. I'm getting way too much information. Hold on. So he's always saying there's way too much fucking information. So he's saying there is portals here on Earth that is for portals to get to other places on Earth. So there is, in fact, someone on this planet. He says this was ancient. It was created by. He says there is one in Mexico with the Mayans, I believe. He says the Mayans. So one of the Mayans, and as you know, they're a very evolved species. I mean, obviously. But anyway, one of them ended up, again, communicating with a different alien species, and they created this portal where it was easy for them to transport different beings and materials from different places on the Earth. So Zalo is saying that when the Mayans needed specific materials, they would go through this portal and it would take them to another part of Earth. They would get the materials that they need for a certain building, and then they would come back and portal back. So you got portals going, kind of like, instead of airplane, because they didn't have airplanes back in the day, they're like, hey, I need this specific piece of, this kind of rock to go with this. Certain rocks weren't available. I mean, Mexico is rich in rocks and beautiful stuff, but they did have their own portals that traveled to different parts of the Earth. And that was thanks to the Mayans, who are I feel like certain Mayans were hybrids. Not sure if you guys are aware of that, but some of them were hybrids. So
I didn't think about that, but that could be. Yeah, I never.
For sure.
Something you never really. There's so many things that you don't think about.
Too much. I know. So much stuff.
I know, right? I know.
Can you imagine going through the portal? Like, you're in Canada, you're like, man, it's freezing up in here, and you get into the portal. Let me get to Mexico for like a day. You have some like nachos with cheese and guacamole, and then you take the portal back to Canada.
Exactly. And Zalo's like, there is no excuse like why we're not able to have this kind of travel. You know what I mean? You know, as far as like, you know, he says, you know, sometimes some countries like, you know, like in Asia, you know, they got the bullet, like the fast trains, like those trains that go really fast. And he says, you know, that's one small step, but he says technically humans deserve to have the, you know, to be able to teleport in a way. That's what it feels like a teleport, you know. But anyway, he is saying that it's a gateway. It's a gateway to either another realm. So I'm just talking about the earth ones. So the earth ones, he's saying that, you know, the earth ones are mainly, you know, like Stonehenge, Easter Island. You can go to the ruins, you know, ancient Egypt, you know, all the places that have all that ancient energy to them. He says all of them have portals, not just portals to get to one another, but the portals that I was talking about, the ancient places, those are the gateways that go to different places in the universe. So he's saying that some portals, like such as the one we're going to talk about, the one underneath the Sphinx in Egypt. He says there's a portal there. Okay, so there is a portal, but with that portal, it is only specific to an energy vibration. If you do not have the right intentions, or if you are not part of a specific being that they want, like whoever created that portal, the beings that created it, if you're not of the highest of light, you won't even find it. It will only appear to the person who is of that similar vibration, or if they are meant to go through that due to their life path, right?
That
So
makes sense.
it will be invisible to the common person. That's what Zalo is saying. So you got
energy
some
like
portals,
activates it.
exactly. So some people will never see a portal ever in their life. Some people will randomly stumble into one. So I want to talk about the random one. So there is, like I said, the one under the Sphinx in Egypt. That one is very specific. He says there are portals that are specific, that have specific coordinates that go to certain planets or certain constellations. Okay. And that is a very real thing. Then you got portals that don't have specific coordinates, that you walk in and it's kind of like playing Russian roulette. Okay. So he says, and those are the ones that he says the common man can walk into. The ones that are, that even certain fae spirits, such as the nature spirits, they actually hide portals within deep nature, like in the jungles and in forests. Those fae spirits also protect certain portals within nature. And if you happen to be deep in a forest and whatever, I know it sounds like a movie, like whatever it's called, like Alice in Wonderland, you look into a tree and you fall in. It really does happen like that. It can. Yeah. They do exist. All TV and shows and movies come from something. All I'm going to say.
Totally. I totally could not agree more on that.
You know, they definitely.
I think the only fear would be if you've like stumble upon
go
it.
Into a can you come back? Right.
That's
the biggest fear.
That's the question. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you come back? I agree. That's always been my thing. It's like, oh, I don't want to not come back. So he's saying that if you are one of those people who stumble upon a portal, you will be able to come back. He's saying that the time, because of this is the issue with stumbling into one randomly, is that the timeline, because time exists here but it doesn't exist there, you know, in other places of the universe, is that you may come back a couple days later and people may have a missing party on you, like where she's missing, you just appear. So he's saying that the only problem would be days might pass and people may be worried, but you will know what happened. And sometimes going through certain portals, he's saying you might have access, you might be able to get in, but your memories might be deleted because they don't want you to spill the beans.
Is the Bermuda Triangle one of those portals?
Yes, the Bermuda Triangle is definitely, he says it's kind of like it's a parallel one. He says that one sends you to a parallel dimension. So he says that deals with parallel realities, the Bermuda one. And he says it's very real. And all those things you've heard, those stories, he says it's very true. Anytime you go into the Bermuda, it does, there's a lot of, he says there's certain vortexes on Earth, and that's one of them. So it's like a spinning vortex, and you go and you get sucked into it and you get thrown into a parallel, never to be seen or heard of again. Sometimes people end up on the other side of the world. It happens like that, you know? So, but he says Bermuda's definitely one. What was the other one? Other than, okay, he's mentioning the Sphinx, the Bermuda, but the Bermuda specific, he says Bermuda specific to parallel realities, but he's also saying the Bermuda, not only, he said, 80% of the time it's parallel reality you'll get thrown into. You might not even think nothing changed because it's that parallel. But he
There's
says,
a story of a pilot who, like, it was like a small aircraft, kind of like, I think it was kind of the size that the ones I was flying. And so he was on board with enough fuel. Like those smaller planes, you have to calculate your fuel plus 45 minutes extra just in case you need to go to an alternate airport. Like that's the system, the legal system you have to do. So he had that. And he supposedly was going, I don't know, through or around or somewhere close to the Bermuda Triangle, I guess. And all of a sudden he ended somewhere really far away. He was totally disoriented and he shouldn't have made it with the fuel he had, yet he was still there.
Interesting. That's exactly what I meant by you ending up in a different place at a different time. That makes so much sense. Yes, that's exactly. Zalo says 100% that happens a lot of times in that Bermuda Triangle. But he says that that person's consciousness, once they enter, they have a choice. Okay, so that pilot, for instance, he may have, of course, he's probably scared for his life. Like, what the fuck just happened? It may feel like you just blinked and then you're on the other side of the world. That's how it
remember what
acts.
he said in the interview. He seemed like he didn't remember much.
Confused and probably
Yes, the memory. Yes.
Yeah.
And he's saying that sometimes the memories are deliberately wiped because one, he doesn't want to, with our human minds, sometimes we're not capable of understanding why we view things as fear and evil when we don't understand. So we feel like, like what the fuck just happened? I'm scared. So when you're scared, you paralyze yourself. So naturally beings and spirit will erase that memory. So he says memory is usually gets erased through these kind of experiences, and also with going through a portal in general. Like let's say you're in the mountains and you find, he says there's a lot of portals in mountains. So let's say you go to a mountain and you find one, and he says even with that, your memory most likely will be erased just in case, unless you're not trustworthy enough to like not spill the beans. We're curious humans though. We're going to want to talk about our experiences, right? So that's why they say sometimes they have to kind of like make sure that our memories are deleted. But he says there is a small percentage of the population that this happens to, that they retain their memories, but they have a choice when they go in through a portal, or they are the ones who get transferred to a different planet or out in the universe, the cosmos, whatever you want to call it. The ones who get taken off Earth, those ones have a conscious choice to come back or not. If they choose not to come back, remember how you said, how do we get back to Earth? Some of them love it so much up there that they say, I don't want to come back. So then they'll either just be a missing person forever, or or their physical body will show up dead. Okay. It will show up dead somewhere in the mountains or somewhere, it will show up. So they will literally just say, you know what, I'm cool with being here. And then their physical body, they just shed it like a shell, and that's it. So these portal experiences, he says, again, it's your free will. You can choose to stay, you can choose to leave. And for those who want to stay, they sometimes get their, stay on Earth. They get their memories wiped just for that reason of not everyone is meant to find certain portals. If you do stumble upon one, it's meant to be. But I want to talk about portals also in like a smaller sense, you know what I mean? Because we also create vortexes and portals within our own. First of all, our heart is a portal. Our third eye is a portal. So I'm going to talk about our portals just living inside of our body. Our portals, like I wouldn't be able to talk to Zalo if my portal of my heart wasn't open, right? If I didn't have my heart open, I wouldn't be able to talk to any kind of being, alien or anyone, you know what I mean? So, so even our portals are there, our consciousness is a gateway to the other realms. And, you can literally be in touch with anyone you imagine, as long as your heart is open, literally. I think the heart portal and obviously our crown chakra, the best ones to open when it comes to communicating to spirits and communicating to anyone. So like I said, sometimes houses we live in can have portals, especially if a room has a noticeable vibe. I guess I could say vibe than the rest of the house. You can also manually create a portal in the mirror, but you got to be careful with that because, with energy, it's all about the intention behind it. You can open up a portal in the mirror and close it down. You can also open up portals in your home and close them down. Sometimes if you randomly have energy surges where out of nowhere, you start to feel everything differently. You start to feel like, you start to having more vivid dreams, or you're starting to have way more experiences with spirits. You're seeing way more shadow people than lately. that could be a sign you open up a portal, especially when it's all happening at once. I especially find that if you see spirits on the regular, and I mean like usually in one specific room of your house, that's how you know it's a portal. And also as intuitives, such as yourselves and myself, is that when we do readings in one specific area, I know I do readings in one area, and that's in the fucking car, which is funny, but I do. Even right now, I'm in the car. I just like to sit in my car. But whatever space you're in, whether you're in a car or in your bathroom, wherever you do, I'm not saying you're gonna take a shit and do a reading. I mean, that sounded funny. I was like, you don't do readings in a bathroom, but like, okay, but like, okay, let's say you do a reading in your living room, right? So let's say you do a living room in the corner of your living room, you do your readings, you have your little crystals, your little Himalayan lamp, your little salt lamp, you got everything set up. And the more you do readings there, the more, even if you never were you don't have to be a psychic. Let's say you're just a normal person and you hang out in the same spot in your room. You do a lot of spiritual things like rituals or just meditation. It builds such a big energy field there that it does create a portal. It makes it 20 times easier to contact spirits or alien beings if you already practice your meditations and
That makes sense
spirituality
to me.
and readings in
Yeah,
one spot.
Totally.
It's an accumulator of energy.
I
So
have this area in the house where I like meditate, and I meditate every night in that same exact spot. And usually when I sit down, even when I'm not ready to meditate yet, if I sit down or lay down, I'll already be hearing beep, like that beep, like that high vibrational beep.
yes.
I'm already hearing
Yep.
the beep, and I'm not even concentrating on meditating yet.
See that thank you for sharing that. I'm really glad you share that, because that's exactly the perfect example of what I was talking about, where you don't even have to do the works anymore. You don't even have to struggle. I don't want to say struggle, but sometimes we're like, it's hard to get into that meditative state or just to talk to spirit sometimes. But how easy it was, you just sit in that area and suddenly you already feel it automatically. That's because the energy is highly, highly charged in that area. You don't need to sit into a meditative state for like 30 minutes. You can receive messages very quickly. So what happens is you are accumulating a lot of your own energy, a lot of spiritual energy. And with the combination of all of these energies swirling, it does create a portal for all of your spirit people to come through way easier and quicker for you when you meditate and do readings in the same spot.
It's my Lucia portal.
I love it.
Exactly. So that's one way we can control and create our own little portals, is by doing something in the same spot. No, it's not wrong to go to a different spot. Not everyone wants to do, they don't like the mundane. You can switch it up if you want. Nothing wrong with that. But I do find it's usually easier spirits come through a lot more quicker when the space is already highly charged with a lot of energy and ions, as Zalo would say. He says it's highly charged ions. That's what he says. So, yeah.
Zalo seems very, very wise. I love it.
I agree. And, he is, and he's saying that, he says space travel, again, he's really loved space travel. He's like, it was invented 100 years ago. Military is well aware. He says they use to do space travel. It uses, excuse me if I'm not saying this right. He's spelling out for me, Taychon. I think it's called tachyon energy. It's called tachyon. I think it's tachyon, but it's Taychon. He says what they use for spaceships is tachyon energy, magnetic pulse, anti-gravity, dark matter, antimatter, crystalline technology. So, God, I know it's a lot. So he said crystalline technology works with the vortexes on the planet, such as, like I said, the Stonehenge and Easter Island and the Sphinx. So he says, because he says even the crystals we possess here on Earth, they're alive, right? Just like all rocks and everything's alive here, right? So he says, but times that by 1 million, So he says, we use a lot of crystalline energy, and those crystals really be able to work with a lot of all of this energy, with all of this, especially with the magnetism. He says there's a lot of beauty and magnets that a lot of people haven't realized. So he says you can create a lot out of magnets and what's it called? He says coils of energy. I don't know what he means by that, but yeah, that's the thing. I need to educate myself on scientific terms, so I have to Google. Literally, sometimes I'll be in a reading, I'm like, what? Let me Google this. Oh shit, it's real. You ever Google something, I'm like, oh, this is real. Like, what is this electric coils he's talking about? But yeah, he's saying that space travel, interdimensional travel, has been around for about 100 years. So he's just saying, you know, of course, he says tachyon energy is not available here yet. But he says that they do possess a lot of the technology. He says they're not Earth interdimensional travel, that at least the governments that travel, he says they may not do it as fast as we do, but they definitely have been exploring space for a long time. And these little big media publicity stunts of, oh, we're going to the Mars or back to the moon, he says, oh, that's simple stuff. They've been past that, you know. So it's just funny how what certain things are revealed. But he is saying that space travel will be a thing. And he says just like how you are able to fly on an airplane to go on vacation, you will be able to take a vacation to certain different planets. And he says it will be a very real thing. It may not be literally in this lifetime with us, but he says it will be a real thing. It will be very common.
Can you imagine that, like that fight, the family fight, like Mars again, man? Come on, I'm sick of Mars. We went to Mars last year. Let's go to Jupiter this year.
I know, right? Like, oh my God, I'm so sick of those damn rocks. Let's go see some different shit. Yeah, exactly. So that would be funny. Like, come on, kids, let's all pack up a family vacation to Jupiter. You know?
Yay, so. Are we there yet?
Exactly. So he's like, it's going to be common. And he says, you know, he says the most thing that will happen in this lifetime while, you know, we're still alive, you know, we're relatively young, you know, but he's saying like, we will be able to see, there will be some kind of space travel, but it will be fucking expensive. That's what he's saying. It's not going to be available to the common man who would be able to afford it, won't afford it till maybe after a lifetime. But for now, in this lifetime, there will be people shuttling to different space stations to look at space for a week or two as a vacation. It will happen in this life, but it'll be expensive. Like, I mean, like 100,000. Like, it's going to be expensive. But he is saying it will be possible in this a little bit later on, probably within the next 15 to 20 years. There will be.
So what I'll do is I'll just work on my vibrator and I'll get there for free via my portal, and I'll see you guys all there.
And you know, that's you know, it's funny you mentioning that is he says that's actually the spirit, because he's saying interdimensional travel, it can be, he says, a thought travels faster than the speed of light. So your thoughts can get you there a lot quicker. So he is saying that exactly what you said is actually a good way to go there, is by remote viewing or by just, you know, just imagining, because your imagination might, let me remind you that, where do you think these thoughts come from? You know, I mean, think about it. Like, I'm not saying you can't be you are the originator of your own thoughts. Of course, you created them. But Zalo says everything comes from somewhere, even from places not on this planet. A lot of your thoughts come from your parallel selves. A lot of your thoughts come from your future selves, your past self. And also, your thoughts also come from your experiences on different planets and different things.
Mm-hmm. So I've noticed, now that you've talked about that, I've noticed that most of those interviews that I had watched were people that already channel, like you, interdimensional beings. Not all of them, but maybe 1/4 of them, maybe something like that, are actually channeling their what they call their guides, but they're actually future versions of themselves.
Yes. That is a very, very real thing. And I'm glad you brought that up, because no one talks about that. And here's another mindfuck.
Is Zalo a future version of you? Do you know?
You know, this is something that I personally can't answer, because I'm still coming to the terms. When Zalo told me not too long ago, he says, you know, your spirit guides and spirit guides in general are all fractals of you. That's something that no one has really come to the realization yet. And that is a mind fuck within itself, right? You know,
yeah, totally. Completely.
You know, they are technically our spirit guides. They are different entities. Yes, they possess their own soul, but he says due to the law of oneness, they are literally us. And that's why sometimes it's like, you know, Zalo, even right now, he's like, I have my own consciousness, but I merge my consciousness with V's consciousness, which does that not make me V? Is V not me? That is a question. He says, you know, we don't have to draw the conclusion, but he is saying that that's something to think about when you think that connecting to a spirit guide or to yourself is so damn hard as people make it seem, but really it's not. It's as simple as talking to yourself. That's the major thing that a lot of us fail to realize, is that we think we have to jump through hoops of fire to connect to spirit or guides, but really if we're able to connect to ourselves first on a human level first, and then connect to ourselves, to our higher selves, to the higher version of that, there is no one you can't connect to then. Because a part of this spiritual journey is about learning, actually all of it is learning more about ourselves through our relationships with others, and learning more about ourselves through everything that we do, right? All about soul growth and evolution. So if you are able to get to know yourself first and foremost, you're able to get to know and talk to any being in this galaxy and many other multiverses and other universes, because there are tons of universes, you know. This is just one that we're in. There's trillions. It's always like there's millions. There's so many universes. So
Ours is probably the hardest though, right?
Yeah, you know, he says, as far as like the third dimension and where we're at right now as as this earth, he says there are different civilizations that are equal and less than to this third dimension. So yeah, there is actually there is someone who's still a little bit lower than Earth, as hard as that to believe. So we are still, and he says that every planet has started at the bottom. He says when we create planets, not all of them are designed to start out at a 10th dimensional level. Some of them start very low, around the 4th, 3rd, 5th. And he says, eventually the civilizations, as like I've said, everything's about learning. The more we learn, the more we're able to grow and evolve. And especially as individuals, and then as a group, he says a lot of the problems here is from everyone thinking that they have to tell everyone else what to do and how to think and how to change, that they neglect themselves. And if you can't change yourself, you can't change as a group. Right? So he says that's what he wants us to get back to. Instead of saying like, we need to help the group consciousness. Of course we have to do that, but you can't help the group. When you are part of the group, you need to help yourself first. That's what he says is most important. It's missing in all these teaching, is that you got to help yourself first. You can't. And then also like I said, with our spirit guides really are a version of ourselves. And that's taking it to, Zalo says it sometimes scrambles my brain. He shows me a vision of scrambled eggs right now. That's the visual that I'm seeing. And it does. He's right. I do feel like scrambled fucking eggs right now. So my mind does feel like scrambled eggs when I think of like, wow, Zalo is literally a reflection of me. And I'm like, wow, that's brilliant then. I never thought. And then he says, well, then V, you might have low self-worth problems if you don't think you would know this knowledge. See? And that's my own issues. You see how it all plays within itself, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just really about knowledge of self and knowing yourself and loving yourself, because when you're able to have, like I said, your heart is your biggest portal. So if you're able to love yourself and have that and save some heart space for you, you'll be able to contact anyone in the galaxy. And I mean, alien beings. And remember, when people, I feel like a lot of people are afraid to initiate contact or channel alien beings. 1, because they feel like they're making it up. 2, because they feel like they're making it up. And 3 because they feel like there's a fear that what if I encounter a dark negative being? What if they
haunt me? I would love it, because I'm used to the energy of the Akashic Masters. I would love to try a new energy. That's one of the questions we're going to ask you.
I love that. Yeah.
How does the energy feel? Because since you're like a medium, I'm guessing that you can channel, spirits and stuff. How does that compare to the energy when you're channeling your guide?
Oh yeah, it is completely different. I've noticed that Zalo has a very neutral, like a punch to the gut, like straight up, no chaser, just vodka shots. Like that's how he is. It's very, very straight to the point. I find that a lot of alien beings, they don't have a lot of emotions with what they're saying, or at least with my personal experience. So Zalo's interaction is completely different from, like, even this morning I was doing a mediumship reading for a young lady, and her grandfather and her dad came through, and their energies, I actually pick up on their actual personalities. So I'm able to feel what they felt when they lived in this life, or I was able to see images. So it's nothing like Zalo. So when I connect to someone else's loved ones, it feels completely different. It's very unique to the individual's personality. Now, when I connect to someone's spirit guide, I also am able to feel the difference in their spirit guide, because no spirit guide or energy is alike. Everybody, and I mean every soul in this galaxy, has a unique energy signature, including spirit guides and aliens. Everyone has their own energy signature. So when I'm dealing with someone else's spirit guides, it's completely different than when I deal with Zalo or my other guides. So yeah, your guys are absolutely right. They all feel different. Zalo and alien beings, in my opinion, are very neutral. It's very straight to the point. Let's just call a spade a spade. Let's not, prolong this. Then you got some spirit guides who are very more nurturing, more human. and more like, hey, be all right. You got to do this and just do it like that, So I've dealt with guides like that as well, where they're more emotional, not emotional, but they're more, just there has sometimes like a extremely loving energy that can make you cry. You ever felt that like love when you're in a like when you're, it just makes you kind of want to tear up. So I've dealt with a lot of spirit guides like that, but Zalo isn't like that. He doesn't really make me tear up at all, actually. So he's very straight to the point. So, and I find that a lot of alien beings, their energy is set up that way. Very, very straight to the point. They still have uplifting messages, but it may not come with a lot of that emotional, tearful impact as other spirit guides.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
If Lauren and I would be able to, like, if we were to seek out to channel an interdimensional being, is there like a specific dimension or somewhere specific we should look into that Lorraine and I vibe off of more as channelers?
Zalo said they will find you. And it's interesting. As far as you being able, hold on. Okay, wait, he's saying two different things. You guys are asking about, is there a specific race you guys should contact? Is that what you're asking?
Like a race or a specific dimension or something that we're more connected to that we can start seeking out towards them.
Yes. Immediately, both of you actually. Zalo says immediately, 100% Arcturians. You might want to start there. They're very heavily, and for you, I think it was, Lorena, I think you're with the blue Avians really like you, but I will have to say the Arcturians, for both of you ladies, you guys have a similar vibration with Arcturians. Zalo says you should start there. Arcturians are very, very intelligent, just like you ladies, and and the way they express themselves is similar to how you do it too. So Zalo really wants you to pay attention to Arcturians, and he says Arcturians are always so willing and communicative and just willing to help and speak, and it's a good place to start. And he's saying even right now, the fact that we're even bringing them up, they're even in our conscious space right now. So that's how quick it is. It's really not as difficult as we make it seem. Zalo says as soon as you set the intention, remember, intentions go beyond a thought. It goes beyond a belief. He says it's very solid. It's one of the best ways to, quote, call an alien or any being, whether it's an archangel or anything. The intention is very important. So he says you set your intention and just wait. And he says you have to be patient because he says the Arcturians, they come through so subtly, you will feel like it's you. And I guess I can go against what we were talking about earlier about essentially everyone is us, right? Not everyone, but I mean, they obviously have their own characteristics, obviously. But he is saying that the Arcturians, you will channel them in a very subtle way. And he says, one of you ladies are more prone to writing. Who's the writer?
I am. I channel sometimes I'll channel like 20, 25 pages nonstop, like sitting down, I'll open my Akashic records and be like, hey, give me information that I can create a course, or what is something that humankind needs to learn about? And then I'll start typing.
That's what it is. He says you've already been in contact. So that's what he's saying. So he says a writer, it's going to come through the form of writings. And he says you really need to, not to mix reading, but Zalo's like, you really got to put this more out there on the internet. I'm sorry. He's like, you're not doing anyone. You need to put it out there way more than what you have been. Because he says that it's almost like, he says, in life, you will never have the proof that people require. Does that make sense? He says it feels like for you sometimes you're still you trust in yourself, but then there's a little bit still holding back. He's saying you need to put out your writings more, and he says your writings will increase over time, but especially with your communication, especially if you want to start with Arcturians, it will mostly be in the form of writings, at least for you. But again, channeling looks different for everybody, right? You know how it is. You guys know. You guys deal with channeling is just, it can be through writing, it can be through verbal channeling, it could be through art. People channel cool artistic pieces, so it can be through just like thinking. You think it's just thoughts and you think they're just your own, but usually when your thoughts are very distinctive and it sticks out and you're like, wait, this is almost too wise to be me. You ever thought that? Like, I'm not saying like we can't.
No, of course I didn't think that. Of course it's me. I'm that wise. Of course I am.
Exactly. I'm like, wow, if you ever wrote something down, like, damn, you reread it and say, this is good. That's a sign you channeled. Usually when you're like, wait a second, where did this even come from? That's a sign you were definitely
Where were the
channeling.
Arcturians when I was taking tests in school, man? Like,
oh, that is so funny. You know what's funny? Zalo says that you have such a way of he says that your sense of humor is bliss. Okay, that's what he says. He says that's one of the things that many humans have not mastered is a sense of humor. He says that is one of the main ways to evolve as a soul that a lot of people don't know. He says simplicity is overlooked. And that's something that's another one of his main messages. He actually taught me to be more simple. I mean, I think I've always been simple though, but he says simplicity is overlooked, and he says your sense of humor is bliss. And that's one of the best ways to evolve, because he says if you're able to you're able to transmute energy very quickly when you're able to laugh at yourself and just take something lightly. He says it transmutes it times 100, lifts your vibration. So he appreciates your sense of humor. He says that's definitely he says he admires that with the humans, the sense of humor. He says that's really great.
Do they have like stand-up comedians there? Do they have any like entertainment kind of like that? Oh, that's a really good question, actually.
That is a good question. You know, I never even asked this before to him. That is a really good question. From what he's saying no, he says we don't really have comedy per se, but we do enjoy just, you know, chatting amongst one another. He says, we get excitement out of science. We get excitement out of discussing ideas and watching your planet. So he said, you know, kind of like how those memes, you know, you see a meme saying, oh, Earth, just drive by Earth. This is ghetto. You know, those little memes. Like, he says, we're not literally that. We never judge. No one's judging, but he says, we do observe. So I guess if you want to take observing as entertainment, I guess, but they don't have a lot of emotions. I think that's also what it is. It's like, they can feel like he knows what positive and negative means, but like he doesn't share. He said that's why he likes to observe me and humans, because they don't have a lot of that entertainment kind of vibes, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. They observe, and he says we get our excitement, or I guess he says the human terminology for excitement, through observing and science and sharing ideas. That's where they get their excitement, or I guess humans would call humor from, but he says we don't really experience humor in the way you guys do at all. Nothing like it.
It's different.
Yeah, very different. Yeah, they definitely are not that they don't have all that human emotions with them at all. They're very like clear, you know, there's not a lot of emotions.
Yeah. Well,
but he's like, that's not
go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, he's like, you know, we may not be as emotional, but we still have the capacity for compassion and non-judgment, but we're just not, you know, he says emotions are a program for humans. It's part of their programmed experience for their spiritual evolution. So he says, since we don't need that, that's the only reason, but we still care, obviously. But what were you guys going to say?
I've heard that, actually. I've heard that humans are the only ones. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if all of them, but basically, when they talk about certain species from other dimensions, the ones that they name, humans are the only ones that currently still carry the program of emotions.
Right. Exactly.
That's crazy.
Exactly.
That's like, for me as a human, right? Like, it's crazy to think that.
Yeah.
Not having emotions. Imagine not having emotions.
It
makes me emotional.
Yeah, it'd be such a different world right now if we didn't experience emotions. It's like you were saying, we wouldn't be living and learning, because we learn through the emotions here. I think it's what kind of helps us go through our struggles too, right?
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we've been nagging you for like an hour and like 30 minutes.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
It was a lot of fun, ladies. It was a lot of fun. I am very blessed to do it and be here with you guys. And I'm very happy I was able to like share more about Zalo, because I don't really talk about him. And I'm like, now seeing about it, I guess I should share more. So it's been a blessing. Yeah, it does. It does. So I thank you guys so much.
Wow. No worries. Thank you so much for answering all our questions and helping out.
Maybe you can share, like, you can talk a little bit about your podcast and tell people where they can reach you and get in touch with you.
And the services you do, readings and channelings and stuff.
Yeah. So, you guys can, as my podcast is called Dimensions of the Soul. You can find it on Anchor. I kind of talk about like our spiritual awakening, kind of similar to your awesome podcast. So, I mean, we're very similar, you know, all of us light workers and starseeds working together. So, you can find me there, Dimensions of the Soul, but my website is goldenvee.com, literally golden and v.com. And then Instagram, Golden Vee, but without the E, because some bitch ass stole that name. So, you know,
I saw
saw that. I
I'm
was like,
so annoyed.
oh.
Yeah, I couldn't get the name.
Oh, it's okay.
But it's okay. But yeah, you know, I don't really care. It's all good. It's all good. So, yeah, you guys can find me there. So I'm just really, really blessed to just, again, be here with you guys. And thank you guys so much for being so cool and just so open-minded and open-hearted and just very divine, spiritual people and beings.
It's really nice to like feel your energy and like talk to you, because nowadays I think a lot of people are on edge and they're finding our times hard with everything that's going on around us. And it's really hard to find someone that's kind of staying in the same positive mental, place. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. I know exactly what you mean.
So it was very nice to talk to you. And Zalo.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, V. We really appreciate you coming on, and we're definitely going to stay in touch with you. So,
yay! I love you guys. Thank you.
I love you too. Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you.
You're so welcome, ladies. Have a great one.
You too. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. We had the best time chatting with V. She's amazing. Thank you, V, so much for coming on. And this episode was just so interesting. We went into so many different topics. I think this is probably the first episode where we just have so many varied, different topics that we talk about during just one episode, right? It's just amazing. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed it, please share it with anybody that you think might enjoy this kind of information. It is a little bit different from other episodes we've done, but Lucy and I are really starting to connect more with this other information that's coming through to us and really opening up to something different energies, different channelings. And yeah, if you guys can share this episode, that would be amazing. We would greatly appreciate it. And also, if you aren't following us on Instagram, make sure you go to Instagram. Our Instagram handle is @soul_tribe_podcast. We are also on Facebook, so be sure to check out our show notes for all of our links to our websites, Facebook, and all of that. We are also coordinating a July Akashic Records Level 1 course. So if any of you are interested, please email us at soultribeacademy@gmail.com and we'll put you on our list. It isn't confirmed yet, but it's going to be, I think, the second week of July. So if this is something that you're interested in or just want more information, be sure to contact us. We're going to send out a newsletter and all that information to you guys very soon. So keep an eye out for that if you're on our mailing list. And if you're not, please go to our Instagram and sign up there. And yeah, we just need a minimum of 8 people. So if we can get that, we're going to go ahead with it and make sure we get our monthly course going. So we're really excited for that. And we want to just thank you for all the support. And we hope you have a really great week. Thank you, everybody. Bye.